Welcome to the CDM eligible collateral representation panel. So myself, Vernon Alden-Smith, Director at ISDA in Collateral Initiatives. And we also have with us today Sophie Mania-Foy, VP, Head of Client Solutions, Strategy, Financial Technology at Nasdaq. And Tom Healy, Consultant at ICMA, International Capital Markets Association. So today we're going to talk about the Common Domain Model, or CDM, and how common data standards can streamline collateral management processes, focusing on the eligible collateral use cases, but we will touch on some other collateral use cases as well. So the evolution of the CDM for collateral asset representation, and the presentation will start with an introduction slides and a problem statement on what the CDM is looking to solve. Okay, so the Common Domain Model, what is it? So it's a standardized machine-readable, machine-executable blueprint of how financial products are traded and managed across transaction lifecycle, including collateral documents and processes. So the CDM is a broad project covering many different products, events on those products, legal agreements, collateral processes, and other encompassing reference data and different versions of mapping, such as FIX, FPML, ISO 20022. Just to be clear, the CDM is not software or an application in and of itself, but can be implemented within your organisations. So, eligible collateral representation, the challenges today. Now, if you work in collateral management, you all appreciate there's a lot of data fragmentation and misinterpretation in many different processes in the end-to-end collateral management process. So many institutions, such as broker-dealers, custodians, buy-side and vendors, have many different touch points, whether it's negotiation, trade execution, substitutions, optimization and disputes, and different regulations, where they're having to exchange data in many different places, whether internally or externally. So there's a loss of interoperability between solutions, causing many different issues and inefficiencies, failures and costs to the organisation. So the benefits of standardised data really are to increase that interoperability. So there's fewer reconciliations, unnecessary misunderstanding of different business logics, can improve many end-to-end BAU collateral management processes, such as onboarding, legacy data, advanced optimization. The list is ongoing. So, eligible collateral schedules, if you're familiar with them, is where we represent collateral assets and their eligibility terms to exchange between one another within their documentation for collateral management. And in recent years, we've had many different regulatory drivers that have, added more complexity to these eligible collaterals and what needs to be within them and what terms they contain. So the market has many different versions of essentially saying the same thing. So collateral documentation itself has a free format table that people put in their own terms that can be misinterpreted, and we have custodian models that have their own eligible collateral schedules and formats, but essentially they're containing the same information but in their own business logic versions. So in the CDM, over several years, we've developed a model that is capable of recognising standard data terms for all the different assets, different issuers of collateral, their concentration limits, the maturity profiles, agency ratings, haircuts and different valuation treatments. All this together gives us a model capable of representing collateral information accurately in one common standard using the CDM. This is just an example of the data types within the CDM, listed many different areas such as asset types, the country of origin, the issuer name, the maturity profile, the specific asset, exchanges, business sectors, indexes, for example. There's many different features in the model for representing this information. And the CDM can produce this as standard code, and here we have some examples of eligible collateral schedule data as JSON extracts, showing them in the CDM data code. So, there's many different use cases and benefits using CDM standardized documentation data and eligible collateral information, such as in the custody, tri-party models. They can use CDM standard for collateral terms to transfer to their counterparties and between other services. You can use artificial intelligence to read hard copy and unstructured data from documents and generate it as CDM code, creating an accurate digital version of terms. Many vendor solutions and counterparties can develop mappings to ensure that they can become more interoperable and exchange this information. And then you have fintech solutions and DLT, where they can develop smart contracts and applications for tokenized collateral and digital assets. So institutions can exchange CDM standards more effectively between one another, both internally and externally. So that's a short introduction. And now I'd like to hand over to Sophie, who's going to give us some insight into what's happening at Nasdaq and how they're using this information in CDM.
So much. Oh, my own mic. How is that? Thank you. Great. So first of all, I wanted to say a big thank you to ISDA and FINOS for inviting us. It's always a pleasure to be here and talk about best practices. And I'm looking forward to getting input from all of you. So if you want to discuss after the session, let us know. Also, if you would like a copy of the deck, very happy to share that with you. We really believe we are at a crossroads where CDM is taking off. So I always compare CDM to blockchain. And many of you in the room, you know that blockchain kind of started 10 years ago and somehow didn't go anywhere. But it's back. I know it's back for real. And the common data model sits so well in between blockchain, tokenized assets, and AI, that now is really the perfect time to adopt CDM. So that's what I want to talk about today. And I'm going to start by a little bit of market context now that we got the definition of CDM out of the way, and thank you for that, Vernon. So, when we look at the market and when we work with our clients, it's really useful to take a pulse of where the industry is when it comes to those innovative technology. And I'm starting back at the beginning of 2025 when we attended ICMA, which is nice attendance of buy side, sell side. And at the time, there was quite a high interest of use of tokenization. And interestingly, you get the same interest around digital asset, use of AI, use of tokenization. So the product, the use case, and the technology, in a way, they go hand in hand. And this is why this time is really going to work and take off. And then I'm fast forwarding to the ISDA AGM, and there were so many polling results. Thank you so much, Amy and team, for sharing that. And I selected this one because, again, it's showing how we are now able to combine the CDM data modeling with Gen AI and more generally AI adoption. And we are all working on finding a way to have a foundational AI ready in maybe 5-10 years. So we really view CDM as a pillar of that new architecture firms will probably need to have not that far away. And we also had the pleasure of collaborating with ISDA, again, on working with the industry on what's happening around tokenized assets, which again is so closely related to the CDM model. And I selected those results because it's very topical. We get more than all the participants. They want to know more about tokenized assets, and it's the same for CDM. How many have adopted the solution? Very few. But we do expect the gap between those two, like the interested and the one using it, to actually reduce very soon. So along those lines, because we knew the market was ready, we actually worked with two firms, QCP and Primrose, to prove to the market that not only was it time to expand the collateral management function to the tokenized assets world, but it was actually working. So what we wanted to prove is that expanding to new technology, to innovation, is going to be an iterative process. There will not be a big bang of starting a new ecosystem, doing a new implementation. Firms will have to start from what they have. So in that case, we've used Nasdaq Calypso, which could be any collateral management solution, where you manage your traditional assets in a traditional way. And then we've proven that if you want to expand to digital assets from a trading, from an exposure perspective, from a margin calculation, you can actually expand your model. You can use ISDA SIM. And again, thank you, ISDA, for confirming that ISDA SIM has specific parameters for crypto derivatives. And then you can follow through. You can expand your collateral inventory to include tokenized assets that will be managed on the blockchain, right? So it's really that theme of expanding, finding a new way to have interoperability and connection to the blockchain rails. Which brings me to CDM, right? As Vernon was explaining, CDM is a way to simplify and homogenize, standardize the way we, our firms, manage the collateral object, whether it's the contract definition, the eligibility criteria, the legacy versus the new IM and VM contracts. Any of those workflow steps in the collateral function could benefit from having objects that are defined the same way for counterparties, right? Now the challenge, and we've talked about that quite a lot in the past few years with Vernon and various people, it's we are not starting from scratch. Collateral management solutions exist, complex workflows have been put in place. It sits into an ecosystem where you get information upstreams in terms of exposure, you feed into reconciliation or kind of downstream solutions. So how can you adopt CDM? How can you modernize without disturbing the existing solution? Well, the good news is that, and I think we'll see a demo next, you can define a CDM translator. You can add that, so basically those purple boxes, you can add that additional layer as what we call a translator, right? So in a way you translate the new common language into the legacy language of your solution. And you can also do that only for one function, only for one workflow step, so that the implementation is seamless, but step by step you actually adopt this new model. So that's actually a little bit of a technical diagram, but that's proving how you can basically implement that CDM. So we are getting the CDM model from the kind of market definition. And then, so the blue, it's the legacy solution we have, and I'm using the example of Calypso. So today we have a tool called Data Uploader where we manage contracts, we manage workflow, trades, positions, in and out. And we found a way to define a CDM translator, so using that standard model so that we can communicate with any external party, any external system, using the CDM as a translation, but then the data model we have inside the solution is unchanged. Right, so we are starting with eligibility because it sounded like a very useful use case with a small footprint, but we are planning other steps in the collateral management function. And this example here is actually talking about AI, and I'm surprised I actually managed to talk for 10 minutes without mentioning AI, or not too much. But we see the CDM model as an amazing way to accelerate the adoption of AI, because it is so standard that it will be much easier to train agents, AI agents, to actually consume objects and manage information that would be CDM based. So we are also working on that kind of example there. Where we consume and import contracts using the CDM model and AI agents. And as a result, we are now trying to find a way to combine all those initiatives that I think every firm is trying to combine. So combining digital assets, blockchain and tokenization, CDM as a model, all of that powered by AI. What we've proven with that pilot I was mentioning is that you can take a traditional solution. In that case, the Calypso solution is defined by the purple boxes on the screen. And you actually only need some incremental changes, which you can see with the green boxes, to connect to the blockchain, manage tokenized asset for collateral, and along the way, simplify with CDM, which you see with the yellow highlights. So a very nice way to actually adopt innovation in an agile project process. So I know we don't have that much time, so I'm going to look forward for a bit before we look at the demo of CDM, and I'm also looking forward to feedback and questions on that topic. So I think now is a great time actually to kind of take a step back and see where we are around innovation. I was at Sibos a couple of weeks ago in Frankfurt. I was not alone. I think there were 12,000 people there. And there were two main topics that were discussed: tokenized assets / collateral management and AI. And I mean, it's happening very fast, right? We are at a point where innovation is bringing to the table so many benefits and so many ways of changing the way we work that projects are starting. And firms really welcome the benefits they can anticipate, right? The fact that they will have a faster settlement process, more automated, real-time instead of T+1 or T+2. They can view the benefits of expanding their collateral inventory to tokenized assets, and then all over kind of seeing how easy it's actually sound to onboard new technologies and adopt innovation. So diving a little bit more into details, where are we and what remains to be done? So I think we've seen via pilot that it's working, it can work for the industry. We have very clear solution diagrams. We know how CDM is defined. So what's to be done so that firms can be in production and have CDM implemented in their production environment, right? And that will have to be combined with the adoption of tokenized asset. It's not like we can do one and not the other. We'll have to combine how we manage those three streams I mentioned, so tokenized asset, CDM, and AI. And it starts by being aware of the existing digital rails, and I think every week there is a new blockchain that's being created or implemented. So finding the ones that we want to rely on as a community, that will be the step one. Because we have to start somewhere, and I'm mentioning a few there. Finding the new central bank digital currencies that will be defined, finding the stable coins we have to rely on in terms of digital assets, understanding how SWIFT is going to change with their new blockchain approach, and identifying the new products that have to be supported from a collateral management perspective. Fully relying on CDM as a foundation, that's been there for a long time. It has been tested, it has been proven. It is the path to interoperability, and it's also a way to combine the traditional assets or the traditional world to digital assets, which is key for successful collateral management. And there is actually some good news. The BCG, working with DTCC, Euroclear, and Clearstream, they are defining digital asset securities principle. So I don't know if you've seen, there was a version 1 published last year, and they announced at Sibos that in a couple of weeks, so it should be this week or next week, they will come up with new principles, which we are really waiting and expecting, because it will help us drive those principles that we need to put in place so that we can go from pilot, from use cases, to production use cases. And that will be my final words. I think now we're going to see that in real, right?
Hello, everyone. My name is Tom Healy. I'm working with the ICMA, the International Capital Market Association. Been working on the CDM for about 3 years now, doing implementations and extending the model for repos and bonds. Since Vernon and Sophie have already explained to you what the CDM is, I'm going to jump right into explaining to you a little bit about how to use it for an application, doing collateral eligibility checks, and then a quick demo. So just to kind of repeat a little bit and resonating kind of what's important about the CDM. One is that it standardizes all the financial products, right? And it standardizes the events in a model format. It implements a open source language. That's clearly why we're here. It's a completely open source language, open source product. It utilizes model-driven workflows and events. So these are now all embedded within the product. It eliminates a lot of bilateral custom development configurations and setup. Anybody who's been involved in the capital markets industry, working with messaging, FIX, FPML, and all kinds of other things, people have to translate what you do and then code it. That's eliminated with the use of the CDM. And it just also accelerates this transition to shared cloud services, and as Sophie was mentioning, to the DLT environment. So in the repo market, so collateral, meaning like securities and bonds, but it could be municipals and mortgages or anything of that sort, turns ordinary loans into repurchase agreements. They are secured by the borrower, providing collateral to the lender for the term of the repo. The repo transactions are really a daily liquidity source for banks, brokers, asset managers, everyone in the financial industry. The turnover in the industry is over $3 trillion a day. What are some of the typical workflows that go on in a repo collateral management? They're kind of illustrated here. One is dealers issuing instructions to intermediaries like tri-party agents and clearing counterparties. Agents and counterparties then instructing their custodians, and then custodians need to move securities across accounts. And all of this tends to take place, or will take place, in very tight timelines. Tends to be very short timelines in the morning, very short timelines in the afternoon. But as collateral is transferred, many failures can occur. And these failures, such as failing to deliver securities or failing to deliver the right securities, or delivering the securities on time, these can cost the industry billions of dollars every year. They also contribute to secondary failures, secondary parties that are also affected by the failure to deliver. Many of the reasons for the failures of delivering are that, many of the reasons for failing to deliver are that there are inconsistent eligibility rules, and this is what Vernon was referring to, inconsistent classifications of assets. You would think the same asset could easily be identified and known, but the classifications can be quite different for the same security. Collateral is held in custody where it cannot be used, so it cannot get access to the custody or to the collateral, or it just may be underutilized. Settlement times and cutoffs are not uniform across the industry. Delivery time delays across regions. One big issue is settling something in Asia and then trying to deliver collateral out of the United States for it. And then there's lots of inconsistency in reference data. So how does the CDM, we think the CDM actually is able to really address these challenges. One is that it reduces these inconsistencies using one common model and one common workflow that's embedded in the model. It eliminates the misclassification of securities. And importantly, I think very important, is that the CDM actually is more than a model. It actually has an underlying code generator. So all of the model representations that you need to translate into code, or the event translations, that is all automatically generated into a programming language of your choice. It generates Java code, Python code, DAML code, TypeScript code, C# code. So whatever language that you actually need, it will convert the model into actual executable code. So one example in the repo space where collateral comes in, and that's especially important, is the use of general collateral baskets. So a general collateral basket is a set of securities where they're provided as collateral from the seller to the buyer, but in this case, the buyer isn't very specific about exactly what securities they want. They're willing to take anything that meets the eligibility requirements that are in the basket. They tend to have lower rates on these general collateral baskets, so they are quite attractive to be able to group lots of securities together. So the CDM can define a basket in this way, and it actually can define a basket just like a product. So we have a product definition, we have the basket definition, you can put an identifier on the basket like any security, and then you can attach or define the eligible criteria. Some of the criteria that you can identify, of course, it goes into much deeper as Vernon was showing, but just, of course, things like who the issuer is, what is the rating of the security, and so on. And then on the asset side, you can go into the asset type, the maturity of the asset, the rating of the asset, the currency, and so on. So there's lots of parameters that you can define on what the eligibility is. So when we actually use this in the CDM, the way we do it, you'll see one example. This is actually a JSON output of the CDM that represents a product. That would be the result of a trade. That creates a product. The product can be directly ingested into any CDM application. On the other side, we have the eligibility criteria, also specified through the CDM. So the two of those go through the CDM, and there are functions pre-built into the CDM that will automatically do the eligibility checks for you. So all of this was written in the domain language of the CDM, which then generated Java code. So no code was written in order to actually go through this process, which is, a beautiful thing, I would have to say. I will, just a note, there's a session this afternoon that's going to be on the CDM and DLT environments. I have another one tomorrow on CDM and DLT. And we have a table outside, ISDA, ISLA, and ICMA, if you want to stop by and learn a little bit more about it. But I will attempt right now to quickly run a demo. Which they told me, unfortunately, that the audio doesn't work. If it doesn't work, I'll be the audio. So actually what's happening here is first you're going to see actually that there's going to be the selection of a general collateral basket up there. So instead of a special security, I'm selecting a basket. So now we've defined or selected the basket example that I showed you before. Now I'm actually going to, the next step is actually to look at what positions I have in my portfolio. So this is the output. This is a JSON output of the actual criteria that I was showing you before. This is the criteria that's going to be used to select which securities are in my portfolio that I actually can repo out. So the next step would be to take a look at the position blotter. So we bring up the position blotter and we run the eligibility check criteria, load the blotter. So now the blotter has gone through the securities using all the parameters that I was showing you before, rating, maturity, and so on, actually selects those securities that actually are eligible that meet the basket criteria. And I think that is probably it. So if you'd like to see a little bit more about what's underneath the hood on the CDM running something like a collateral eligibility check, please stop by and see us. Q&A or?
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone has any, we have, I think, a few minutes for any questions if anyone has any. Yes.
So you talk about the reference data. Do you have integrations with reference data vendors
implementations to standardize
So-
they used?
Yeah, so it's the tool itself is open source, and so it can be used. It's not plugged in. The reference data isn't plugged in directly to the CDM. It's used by reference data, or could be used by reference data providers at this point. So there's nothing. It's up to whoever is providing reference data or who's ever doing the integration in their environment. They would do the mapping to the CDM themselves. Yes,
Presentation, the Nasdaq presentation,
for Sophie.
the data translator
Yes.
that you have, how did you deal with incoming data coming in denormalized in different formats from different companies and different applications? How do you normalize it so that your translator can look at it?
So, well, it's a case by case, right? So we already have a way to consume information coming from outside in the form of contracts of exposure of trades. So for us, it was kind of expanding the way we translate data to use the CDM model, right? So kind of step by step. But happy to discuss with you if you have a specific use case in mind, we can explain how we were doing that. It's working with many clients on all their collateral use cases. Yes, sure.
Thanks, everyone. Just to highlight that we've gone over the collateral eligibility use case in detail today, but that's not the only collateral use case built in the CDM. We also have quite extensive collateral documentation, such as the Credit Support Annex or CSA, election structures built into the CDM, and we've also built margin call, issuance and response messaging standards as well. So all of this can be brought together into collateral processing. I think Sophie highlighted some of that in her presentation as well. Also to highlight, we have several working groups under the FINOS structure for collateral, covering collateral processes. The main one is the CDM Collateral Working Group. We have one for tokenized assets, and also under the ISDA structure, a legal agreements CDM working group as well. So if there's any of this is of interest to you, please come and find us outside and we can give you some details. Yeah.
So since we are into a commercial break, we are actually working very closely with ISDA and our client community on trying to define the next step for tokenized assets. So I mentioned that webinar that we did on June 11. We have organized another conversation on November 13. So if you would like to join, it's virtual, so it's quite simple to join. We would love to count you as participants, because we'll be able to, get polling results and understand how ready the industry is to adopt CDM tokenized assets as trading assets or as collateral. So I'm very much looking forward to a large industry participation. Do you want to add something?
Anything else? No? All good.
Thank you very much.